Welcome to Lecture 12 and 13, where we will go over the process of photosynthesis. There are a few terms that are important to know as we discuss photosynthesis. The first is, what is a heterotroph? A heterotroph is an organism that acquires its organic molecules from other organisms. Hence, it can be termed an other feeder. A heterotroph needs to consume other organisms in order to meet its nutritional requirements. An autotroph, on the other hand, is a self-feeder. This type of organism can make their own organic molecules to break down for metabolism. A photoautotroph is an autotroph that can employ photosynthesis in order to fix energy from the sun into organic molecules. This would be taking carbon dioxide and water molecules and converting it into some sort of sugar molecule. These sugar molecules that are produced by photoautotrophs can supply the entire world with energy. There are many different types of photoautotrophs that can be present on Earth. These types of organisms, whether they are prokaryotic, such as purple sulfur bacteria or cyanobacteria, or are eukaryotic, such as these unicellular eukaryotes, multicellular algae, as well as plants, can utilize the process of photosynthesis to make these organic compounds. Chloroplasts are the important organelle which carry out the photosynthetic process. The green parts of plants have a high percentage of chloroplasts where photosynthesis occurs. Plants have leaves, which are the main site of photosynthesis. Within the leaf tissue, you will have the mesophyll. This is considered to be the inner tissue layer where there is a high concentration of chloroplasts. Chloroplasts contain chlorophyll, which is the green pigment that helps to absorb light energy from the sun. Leaves also contain stomata. These are pores in the leaf that can open and close and control the entry and exit of gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen. They can also help control the flow of water within the leaf as well. Veins will help bring water to the leaf from the root system, and they will also help to bring various nutrients. The stroma, remember, is considered to be the interior chamber of the chloroplast. This chamber is inside both of the membranes. So the outer membrane encloses the chloroplast. This is followed by the intermembrane space and the inner membrane. Within the inner membrane, you will have the stroma. The stroma will also contain the thylakoids. The thylakoids are the membrane-bound sacs inside of the stroma, and this is where the chlorophyll pigments are housed. Please refer to this diagram for the overall organization of the chloroplasts. If we start from the interior part of the chloroplasts, we have the thylakoids. Remember, the thylakoids are also membrane-bound. They will house the thylakoid chamber, the space within a thylakoid, and this will be surrounded by the thylakoid membrane. These thylakoids are stacked into columns that are called grana, and these grana are also interconnected with membrane. These grana will then be housed within the stroma. The stroma, meaning the interior chamber, will then be enclosed with the inner membrane. This will be followed by the intermembrane space, and then completely covered by the outer membrane. These chloroplasts will be present within the mesophyll cells. The mesophyll cells will then fill up the interior of the leaf tissue. If we take a look at the diagram at the top, we can see that these mesophyll cells contain a high number of chloroplasts. The mesophyll is the interior tissue layer. You will also have various veins that will help to carry water and nutrients up from the root system into the leaf or mesophyll tissue. These will then be surrounded by the stomata, which can help control the exchange of gases into and out of the leaf. This slide here gives us an overview of the process of photosynthesis. Remember that photosynthesis is the opposite of respiration. In photosynthesis, we are going to have the joining of carbon dioxide and water to form organic molecules such as glucose. This is also going to cause the release of oxygen as a byproduct. Overall, the delta G value of this reaction is positive 686 kcal per mole. This means that overall this process is endergonic and a large amount of energy is required for this reaction to occur. Remember that energy comes from solar energy. So our reactants in this equation are solar energy, as well as carbon dioxide and water. If we take a look at the balanced equation, we have 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 12 molecules of water that will be involved in this base reaction. Our overall products will be a base sugar molecule, in this case glucose, C6H12O6, as well as water as another byproduct, as well as oxygen. If we take a look at the molecules in this equation, I would like you to take into account the red molecules in carbon dioxide and the blue molecules or atoms are shown in water. In carbon dioxide, we can see that the carbon from the original carbon dioxide of our reactants all gets placed into the organic molecule of glucose. So all 6 carbons from our reactant side gets incorporated into the sugar molecule. However, the oxygen from carbon dioxide goes into 2 places. Some of the oxygen will be present in our sugar molecule, but the other half of the oxygen will be present in the byproduct of water. In our blue labeled water reactant, we can see that the hydrogen molecules or hydrogen atoms from the molecule get divided up between the water and the sugar molecule. The oxygen from our incoming water molecule, however, is all being eliminated in the byproduct of oxygen gas. So that means that all of the carbon coming into this equation goes to the making of the sugar molecule. The oxygen from the carbon dioxide coming in gets divided up between our sugar and our water byproduct. If we take a look at the water, the hydrogen that is coming in from the water molecules gets divided up between the sugar and new water molecules. However, all of the oxygen from the incoming water is released as a byproduct. When we understand what is going on in this process, this will become more evident. Photosynthesis, like respiration, is also a series of redox reactions, meaning that some compounds are going to be, or elements are going to be oxidized, while others are going to be reduced, meaning some are going to be taking in electrons while some are going to be giving up electrons. In this instance here, for photosynthesis, the carbon is actually being reduced in this equation. So that means the carbon is going to have electrons added to it. On the other hand, the water of our reactants is being split or oxidized and allows for the production of oxygen. This also will allow for electrons to be formed in the form of hydride ions. The electrons are going to be stripped away from this incoming water as hydride ions. When these electrons are being stripped away from the water, they are considered to be low energy. They're going to get energized by the incoming sunlight and going to transition into a higher energy state. Once these electrons are high energy, they're eventually going to get passed to the carbon dioxide, once again as hydride ions, and eventually be used to form glucose. There are 2 main phases to the photosynthetic process, the light reactions and the dark reactions. The light reactions occur in the thylakoid membranes. This is where the solar energy is going to be harvested by chlorophyll, which typically contains magnesium. And these low energy electrons that are going to be stripped away from water are eventually excited by the solar energy coming in. The energy from the sunlight is going to eventually be transferred to these electrons. These electrons are then going to be passed, in this case, to NADP+ to form NADPH. Keep in mind that this is simply another electron carrier. However, in respiration, we saw the important carrier as NADH. In photosynthesis, the important electron carrier is NADPH. In the light reactions, some ATP is also going to be formed. This is going to be formed through the process of photophosphorylation. Remember, in respiration, we saw oxidative phosphorylation, where oxygen was used and the energy from electrons was used to pump protons to create a gradient to produce ATP. In this case, we are once again going to see the production of ATP. However, the energy is going to be coming from the sunlight, hence photophosphorylation. In this process, in the light reactions, oxygen is going to be released. In the dark reactions, which are also known as the Calvin cycle, this cycle occurs in the stroma, so the interior chamber of the chloroplast. In this process, we will have carbon fixation. This is where carbon dioxide is going to be added to form organic molecules. In the dark reactions, carbon is going to be reduced by the addition of these high energy electrons from NADPH. Overall, this will utilize the ATP. So in summary, the light reactions which occur in the thylakoid membranes are going to lead to the production of NADPH and ATP. We're also going to have the production of oxygen because water is going to be split so that these electrons can be extracted from the water molecule. In the Calvin cycle, the NADPH and the ATP created from the light reaction is going to be utilized for carbon fixation. So the dark reactions is where the actual precursor sugar molecules are going to be formed. This diagram here gives you a summary of the light and dark reactions. So once again, the light reactions occur in the thylakoid, which we can see in the diagram above. We have light energy coming in from the sun. We will also have water coming into the light reactions. This water is going to be split, the electrons are going to be extracted, and they're going to go from a low energy to a high energy state. When water is split and these electrons are extracted from water, this will lead to the production of oxygen gas, which we see in the bottom of this diagram. The light reactions produce ATP and NADPH, so we can see those linking the two cycles together. The ATP and NADPH are going to be used in the Calvin cycle. As a result, at the end of the Calvin cycle, we will have the production of ADP and NADP+, and these are then going to be used in the light reactions. In the Calvin cycle, we will have carbon dioxide coming in, and it's going to get fixed into organic molecules. In this instance, we have the production of CH2O. This would be a precursor sugar molecule. Once again, the dark reactions occur within the stroma. All of this is going to be enclosed by the outer and inner membrane of the chloroplast. It is important to understand what chlorophyll pigments are and how they work. It's also important to remember that light is a form of electromagnetic radiation, which means light can behave as both a wave and as a high energy particle in the form of a photon. Light waves can come in a broad spectrum of wavelengths, where the shorter length of the wavelength equals a higher amount of energy being carried in that wavelength. Pigments can absorb light at various wavelengths. However, they will look like the color of light that they don't absorb, which can be a little bit confusing. So when you have a chlorophyll pigment, which is green, it will absorb other forms of wavelengths of light. However, it will be reflecting green, which is why you end up seeing the green color. Similarly, you can have carotenoids, which we'll see in the next slide. Carotenoids have an orange color, which means they absorb other wavelengths and reflect the orange color for you to be detected by your eyes. Plants have several different pigments, so that way they can absorb the maximum amount of energy from the light coming in. Common pigments are chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and carotenoids. This diagram here gives you an idea of the different wavelengths of visible light. Visible light ranges from 380 to 750 nanometers. 380 would represent shorter wavelengths and higher energy, whereas 700 nanometers, for instance, represents a longer wavelength of light and a lower energy of light as well. Keep in mind that there are different types of light, such as UV and infrared, that are present within the environment. However, only the wavelengths between 380 and 750 are considered to be visible light. If we take a look at the diagram below, we can see the difference between the common chlorophyll and carotenoid pigments that are present within plants. If we take a look at what kind of wavelengths that they absorb and reflect, we can understand why they are the different colors and how important they can be in the photosynthetic process. If we take a look at chlorophyll A, which can be seen in the teal color, we can notice that there is a peak, meaning the highest point of the chlorophyll wave at about 450 nanometers. Note that this then decreases, which would reflect a low absorption of wavelengths in the 500 to 600 nanometer range. We then see a secondary peak for chlorophyll A around 680 nanometers. If we take a look at chlorophyll B, we can see that it has an absorption peak at around 470 to 480 nanometers. This then drops down between 5 to 600 nanometers, and we also see a secondary peak for chlorophyll B around the 640, 650 nanometer wavelength. So as you can see, both chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B have high absorption levels between 4 to 500 nanometers, and another peak between 650 and 700 nanometers. However, around the green and yellow wavelengths, so between 5 to 600, 620 nanometers, there is a very low absorption for the chlorophylls. If we take a look at the carotenoids, these colors reflect orange, so we can see that they have maximum absorption below 530 nanometers. However, when you get into the orange, yellow, and red portion of the visible light spectrum, they have little to no absorbance, meaning that they would be reflecting these colors. This means that by using multiple different pigment types, the chloroplast can maximize its absorption of the visible light spectrum to also maximize the photosynthetic process.